I'm just waiting for the confirmation on the YouTube app. Should be live any minute now. Or are we already? I guess we are live. Good evening, students. Welcome to another session of Ekcel Academy's live session for CSEET program. Let us start with the announcements first. As you can see on the screen, there is a CSEET mentorship program from our side for the June 2026 students. To join this mentorship program, all you have to do is just call us on the number splashing on the screen, 973-973-3400. So what is the benefit that you will get if you join this mentorship program? You will get one-on-one personal mentorship from one of us at Ekcel Academy. Then you will get writing practice, not just studying. There will be weekly tests. Important thing is there will be corrections too. Of course, there will be mock exams at the end along with corrections once again. And there will be group mentorship sessions by CS Swati Sharma, our colleague. So that is what this mentorship program will fetch you. All you have to do is just call us on that number and you will be admitted to that mentorship program. Then apart from that, we also have a WhatsApp group. If at all we have to share, and we will in fact share the notes and materials used in the class and any other important CSEET updates. So also the class related announcement, the scheduling and whatnot, those will be made through our WhatsApp channel. So again, the link of that is in the description. All you have to do is just click on the link and it will take you there. So that's about the announcements. Let's move to the introduction part of economics. Yesterday what we did was we looked at economics as a subject, like what exactly economics is all about. That is what we looked into in yesterday's session. Today we will be looking at the actual study material itself released by the institute. So let us get into that. Now again, I can in fact go by the study material. Of course, that will not be an issue for me, but the problem with the study material part is it's too dry. Instead, we'll try to understand through various examples, because real life examples are always easier to understand than what we have in our textbooks. The unfortunate thing about our textbook is that even in spite of so many years, we see the same stuff over and over again. We haven't updated much in terms of textbook as such, in terms of the material per se. So it's not just the problem of ICSI, various institutions across the country, they have the same problem. They haven't updated the material as such. So in this day and age, that is not an issue. Of course, we'll study what is there in the material, because for us marks is also important. But my way of thinking is you should not be in such a position that you have to buy hard stuff. The moment you are supposed to buy hard something, that is memorize something, then it defeats the purpose and you will not be able to buy hard. Not everyone has the same amount of memory. For example, someone like me, I can't remember stuff at all. If you ask me what happened yesterday, then it will be very difficult for me to recall that. So in such a circumstance, it is better if you understand it. So that way you don't have to memorize at all. So that's the point. And also we'll make sure that everything which is there in the study material is also covered. So I have used few slides, of course AI generated, so that we will try to understand what is that we will be discussing throughout the today's session. So I will in fact open the textbook so that you will also know what I will be covering. So now we are in lesson 1, that is basics of demand and supply and forms of market competition. As I said yesterday, it's not as if we are starting with this such, because this there is something else also apart from this, that is the introduction to economics. So we'll be starting with that. That is how the institute has planned the lesson. Okay, we'll stick to that. Now we have the key concepts here. There is something which we have to understand, that is the introduction of economics, etc., etc. There are various economics for citizen, like why do we need economics, then the economic problem, that is scarcity and choice, again age old concept. Then how to define economics, there are few definitions, some of them relevant, some of them definitely outdated. Then what is the nature of economics, economics as a science, economics as an art, normative economics, positive economics. These are the things which I'm sure you would have studied in 11th and 12th. So what we will be doing is we'll try to cover up to this point, that is up to the point of demand and supply. So we won't start demand and supply today, that will keep it to the next class. So up to this point, that is theory of demand and supply. In fact, I'll mark right away. So this we will be doing in the next class. Up to that point, we'll see whatever we can cover, we will cover in an interesting manner with lots of examples, so that it will be easy for you to understand what is mentioned in the textbook. So if you read this textbook, then you will fall asleep within no time. So let us not do that. Okay, so let me go back to my slide. So now I want you to think of economics as a study of the choices we all make every day. In fact, that is what economics is all about. No, we make choices. Yesterday we discussed economics is not some state subject where some central planner sitting somewhere is deciding all the things for you. Do you think they can make the lunch program for everyone in the city? Do you think they can be as efficient as the Dabbawalas who have achieved Six Sigma thing? So wherein they say in one defect in 6 million deliveries. Do you think the government can be as efficient as them? No. So we also looked at spontaneous order, F.A. Hayek. So his definition of economics and what his thoughts are on economics, which is popularly known as Austrian School of Economics. Okay, so that's why we'll look at it from that point of view. Okay, wherein economics is all about the study of the choices we all make every day in our day-to-day lives. In fact, one expert says economic affects all our lives. Of course, yes. For example, whether you are deciding what to eat for lunch, planning a family vacation, or even watching the news about government budgets, you are engaged in economics. You are definitely engaging in economics in all these cases. See, for example, what to eat for lunch. So here again, I have to make a conscious decision. So here it's not just about quantity or anything, it's also about different choices. Do I want to eat, let's say, rasam rice, or do I want to have some roti? What is that I want to have for lunch? So should I think of the items which are available at home? Can we cook rasam rice today? Do we have sufficient items? Or should we cook roti with some sabzi so that we can have that? So again, I'll have to think whether do we have that? Should I get it? Do we have sufficient money to get that, etc., etc.? Of course, we won't be thinking of all these things consciously, but we will think about economics on a day-to-day basis. Even while planning a family vacation, that's again, economics is involved there. No, like how many people are coming on a trip? Where are we going? Are we going outside the country? Do we have the visas? Do we have enough money to pay for the visas, travel visa? And then what if we are traveling internally? How are we going? Are we going by train, or are we going by air? Should we take train one way and then come by flight, etc., etc.? All these things, these are conscious decisions which we make or we try to make on a day-to-day basis. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to think of economics. I mean, if I tell you what economics is through definitions directly, then it's too boring. Why should we keep it that way just because our textbooks are so? Okay, so that is what we are approaching the subject. That is the direction through which we are approaching this subject. Now, you may wonder, as young adults or young students rather, why should you care about economics? How does that affect you? Well, economics not only is about decision making, but it also helps us in thinking very clearly and solving problems. It teaches us to use the data smartly and evaluate the trade-offs of our choices. That means opportunity cost. Like, if I do this, I won't be able to do that. If I do that, I won't be able to do this. So which do I prefer more? Do I prefer A or do I prefer B? For instance, let's say you have some 200 rupees with you, and one option which you have is to spend the 200 rupees on a movie ticket. Okay, let's assume that you have chosen to spend the 200 rupees on a movie ticket. But when that is the case, you may not have any money left to buy a new, let's say, an app or maybe game or say for a book. So in such a circumstance, knowing economics will tell you that this is nothing but a trade-off. You opted to watch a movie by paying 200 rupees and now you are left with nothing. So when you're left with nothing, you can't buy the app or the game, or you can't buy the book, or you can't have food in your favorite restaurant. Why? Because you chose that over the other options. Okay. In fact, there is this Council for Economic Education which points out that economics teaches us to think logically, use data smartly, and develop strong analytical and problem solving skills. Don't you think these are the skills we use in our day-to-day life, from personal finance to understanding public policy debates? So that's why we need economics. It's not just that academics need economics. It's not just that those who run the country need economics. Of course, they need economics more, but we also ought to understand economics so that we know what exactly the state is doing or not doing, rather. Anyway, moving on. Economics, they say, is the social science of scarcity and choice, because we know resources are scarce. Scarce means what? Limited. And when it comes to our wants, they are of course unlimited. See, we want everything. Given a choice, we want all the things in the world. But do we have such unlimited resources? Of course not. Our resources is always limited. No matter who you are, even if you are Ambani, your resources is still limited. So therefore, that means what? When we have unlimited wants and the resources is only limited, that means we have to make that choice. Every decision involves choice. Imagine you are at a cafe in your favorite city. Let's say you are in Mumbai and you have rupees 300 in your pocket. Let's assume for a second. There are dozens of tasty dishes you want. You know that there are so many places you can go to, maybe Ulhasnagar, you can go to maybe some other place where you will get authentic, let's say, some Sindhi dishes there. You want to taste that, but again you are somewhere in the heart of the city and that place is so far away from your place. So then how do you manage that? Because you have only 300 rupees in your pocket. So then what do? Which ones will you pick? That situation, that is limited money versus unlimited food choices. That is what you are faced with. And that is in fact the fundamental economic problem. So economics teaches us how to make those decisions. In fact, as one of the definition goes, this I picked from Investopedia, you can check it out. Economic studies how societies manage scarce resources to produce, to distribute and consume goods and services. Once again, economics studies how societies manage scarce resources. First we have to produce, then we have to distribute, and then we have to consume, whether goods or services. In other words, economics is about making the best choices when we can't have everything we want. Of course, we can't have everything we want. So when that is the case, let us make the best choice. Which do you think is the best restaurant where we can get the best food with that 300 rupees in our pocket? We are in Mumbai, so we want to have that food for sure. We can't always be confused. We will definitely eat something. So that something, the ultimate choice which you make, economics will help you make a better choice. Okay, so that is why economics is needed for everyone. It's not just the academics or the others whom we mentioned earlier. Anyway, so now throughout this lesson, or rather the introductory part of this, we'll try to cover all these things, that is why we study economics, the problem of scarcity and choice, the definitions, the nature of economics, the topics which we studied saw earlier, positive versus normative analysis, the scope of economics and how different economic systems work. So like we have socialistic system, we have mixed economy, we have capitalistic system, all those things we'll try to understand. Okay, so we'll also look at these concepts through the eyes of Austrian School of Economics. That is, I believe, is the most important thing, because this is something which we Indians have not consciously decided to study. Okay, anyway, we'll see. So now let's again ask this question: why study economics at all? Isn't it boring theory? Why should we study about demand? Why should we study about supply? What is this production? What are these factors of production, etc., etc.? Okay, but actually, economics is everywhere. It's literally about the choices you and everyone else make every day. Think about your own life. Your family has a budget for groceries. Your school has to allocate funds for books and events. And the government has to decide how much to spend on roads, how much to spend on health, or in fact, education. All these are economic decisions, no? Whether your family budgeting the groceries, or school allocating funds for the books and events, or the government considering what to do. Should we build infrastructure? Should we worry about the defense? Should we worry about something else? What to do? So, if you learn economics, you will understand why prices of things go up and down. So, which is nothing but inflation. Why jobs are hard or easy to find. Unemployment, of course. Of course, it's hard to find nowadays. And why governments tax and spend the way they do. For example, very soon the union budget will be presented. So then you will see the government telling us where the money has been spent, or where the plan to spend the money for the next 1 year, and where they got the money from. So they have to make the decision too. They will have all the pressure. Remember last year when the prices of onions shot up, or even the tomatoes, that was an economic event. And economics helps explain these everyday mysteries, like why suddenly the tomato price increased, why suddenly the onion price increased. In fact, many governments have fallen because the onion prices have increased. So knowing economics will help you make these smarter decisions. The Council of Economic Education explains that economics helps explain choices. It will tell us why a particular individual will choose one over the other. As small as your personal day-to-day decisions, and as large as foreign policy decisions. That means, why did you buy a movie ticket over buying a book? Why did the government spend more on defense over education? Why did a person construct a house versus buying a car, etc., etc., etc. So economics will help us understand why any individual or organization is making these choices. So whether it is choosing to make your own lunch, or deciding whether a country should trade for oil, economics is at play. Every day we will be dealing with economics. And another reason to study economics is that it gives you tools to analyze public issues. If someone tells you that government should reduce unemployment, that's a normative claim. That means you are making a value judgment that you are telling that someone should do something. The government should reduce unemployment. But if you look at it, if you just zoom out a bit, you can understand that economics will actually help you separate the facts from the opinions. That is an opinion. No, the government should reduce unemployment. Of course, it's an opinion. Now, on what basis did they come to that conclusion, or why did they opine so? For instance, if you zoom out a bit and try to understand the economics behind it, you might actually learn how unemployment is measured and what causes it. Then you will have a better understanding of what to do. We can't directly go and tell someone, okay, you do that. We should try to understand what is the root cause for all this. And economics is the subject which actually helps us in trying to understand all this. So that's why economics is so important. Okay. Moving on. And as I said earlier, it helps your critical thinking, or rather it helps you sharpen your critical thinking. You'll start asking questions like, how does raising taxes affect businessmen in Delhi? Like, small businesses are getting affected in Delhi. Why? Because the taxes have increased. Or small businesses in Coimbatore, they are suffering. All the manufacturers in Coimbatore or Tirupur, they are suffering. Why? Because the GST rate has increased for the items which they are manufacturing. So then again you will understand why is that happening. Why do some people say that raising the minimum wage will hurt job growth, while others say it helps workers? On one hand, someone is saying that no, we can't raise the minimum wage because then there will be delays in, the production will suffer because money will have to be routed, or rather used there for paying the labor. While others says, no, it will help workers. Otherwise, how will they manage with the rising inflation? That is also there. So economics will help us. What is the trade-off? How do we arrive at any conclusion? What happens if RBI prints more money? Okay. So all these things can be answered with the help of economics. So as you learn, I believe, you will be able to look at news and promises from politicians and analyze them. Instead of taking things at face value, you will ask, are the facts right? Is this politician saying whatever he is saying? Is he in fact correct? Are these goals even realistic? He's saying that India will be a superpower in 2000 by 2047. Are you crazy? Can we do that? Or is there a trade-off? Are we sacrificing something else to achieve that? Are we sacrificing the environmental safety? I don't know. We don't know. We have to look at it that way. So economics will help us in trying to understand all these things. So that's why we have to learn economics. It's about choices, incentives, and trade-offs in the real world. It helps you understand everything from your own career decisions to national policy. As we progress, remember that economics is not just abstract theory. It's about people, their wants, and how those wants get met. Okay. So as you can see in the picture here also, we have this scarce resources problem. No? The fellow has limited time and limited amount of money. That's what the picture depicts. But look at the wants. The wants are unlimited. So it will go on and on. And with this limited amount of time and money, what do we buy? What do we use? That is there always. Okay. Let's move to the next slide. So this is why we should study economics, because it will help us in critical thinking. It will help us improve our data skills. It will help us in problem solving. Okay. So let us move further. With respect to scarcity and choice. So this is an economic problem. Okay, what? Scarcity and choice. You already have an feeling that, let's say, I'll think of a situation. Imagine you are going into a store with only rupees 500. Okay. Now you already know that you have only 500 rupees in your pocket. See, when you look at the various items in the store, your mind will keep telling you, boss, you have only 500 rupees in your pocket. You don't have any money in your bank account. You can't pay through UPI. You don't have a credit card. So make sure that you budget whatever you are buying and restrict that to 500 rupees. Unfortunately, you see a new video game there for rupees 1,200 and you really want that. Or maybe you see a pair of shoes in a supermarket, which is, or in the same store, let's assume, for 500. That also you need. Now, you have two choices, or rather two things which you want, not choices rather, two things which you want. Again, these are all wants. The wants are never ending. I'm just giving you two examples. One, the video game which you want, which costs you 1,200. The other is the pair of shoes which you want, which is costing you 500. You can't buy both, especially when you have only 500 rupees. Okay, you have to choose one. That's scarcity. That means you don't have enough money for all your wants. And choice, that is, you'll have to pick one over the other. And in this case, the most sensible thing would be to get that pair of shoes, because you have 500 rupees and you anyway want that, you get it at least, no? Whereas if you really want to get video game, you can't, because that costs 1,200 rupees, whereas you have only 500 and remaining 700 you don't have that. So you'll have to simply come back home empty-handed. At least get the pair of shoes when your desire is there and you really need it, or hopefully you need it. It's not just a want. Anyway, moving on. See, again, the wants, the unlimited wants, the limited resources, this is the heart of economics. Think about all the things we want. I need the latest Apple products. I need that fancy camera. I need that sports car, etc., etc. I don't need all this. I want all this, of course. So when I want all this, somewhere at the back of my mind, I get reminded that, look, boss, you don't have so much money. And on top of that, I don't have so much time also to enjoy all this. I want to go to, let's say, some fancy foreign country. I want to buy this new expensive SUV. I want that latest MacBook M5, MacBook Pro. I want iPhone 17 Pro Max. Do I even have the money to buy all those? And let's assume for a second that I have the money. Do I have enough time to enjoy all these? Again, I'll have to make that choice. Like, maybe I'm better off taking that holiday to that European country. Anyway, at least I will enjoy. I have a peaceful time and then come back. See, I'm making a choice here. This is nothing but trade-off. That means I'm foregoing the other things. I don't want to buy the fancy gadgets. I don't want to buy that car also. I'll go on a tour. Let me experience some new country. So that is the trade-off which I'm trying to make. Okay. So this list of wants will never end. Yet, the money, the time, even our efforts are finite. That means fixed. It's not like it's expanding, ever expanding. There is no such thing as absolute abundance. Okay, even if money grows on trees, of course, which it doesn't, time and attention are still scarce. As I said earlier, even for Ambani, he can't satisfy all his wants. Why? Because he doesn't have so much time. He can't. He doesn't have so much effort. I mean, he doesn't have that attention span to give attention to so many things. His time is limited, even if his money is not. Okay, so this mismatch is what makes us choose one over the other. So this mismatch between the wants and the resources is what helps us choose, according to us, the better option. Okay, so that is what economics tells us. Another example which I can readily think of is, think of a restaurant. Suppose you, your friends and some of your cousins, you want to order food at a restaurant in Bangalore. Bangalore is known for good restaurants. But there is only one portion of biryani left. But 3 people want it. Obviously, the restaurant can't satisfy all the 3 at once. They have to decide who gets it or how to split it even. Each person there values the biryani differently. One is extremely hungry and that person is ready to pay whatever the restaurant asks for. Another would rather have those in such a circumstance. So now the choice of who gets the biryani and who has to pick something else is driven by scarcity. Why? Because we have only one biryani. And also the individual preferences among whoever is left there. Okay, so that's why we say economics is not about some state, some faceless agency making all the policies. It's about us, individuals. Because when we face scarcity, we face opportunity cost. Because I have to give up something to eat this. I have to give up this to eat something else. Choosing one thing means giving up another. If you spend 300 on that snacks, you can't use the 300 to, let's say, go on an Uber. Maybe then you'll have to go by local metro. So the opportunity cost of snacks is the metro ticket you didn't take. And economics suggests, or rather economics emphasize this trade-off a lot. They keep on hankering on this trade-off. The famous principle is people's choices always involve costs, including the opportunity cost of what they gave up. Okay, yesterday we discussed about opportunity cost, so I don't want to get into that once again. Every day you make these choices, often subconsciously. As I said, even though I'm giving you lots of examples here, we don't think of all these things when we're making that choice. When you're with your friends group or with your relatives, cousins, you can't tell them all these things. If you start telling them all these things, then think that you have gone crazy. But subconsciously, this is happening at the back of your mind. Okay. So that is the thing. It is also important to see for you as to how scarcity and choice play out in society at large. For example, India has limited resources like farmland, factories, labor and capital. We have all these things in limited amount. We have to decide as a nation what to do with that. Should we produce like car, food, steel? And even if we decide how to produce, do we have sufficient technology or do we have labor? And who gets the output? Should we internally consume it? Should we export it? These are all the fundamental economic questions all economies face, all countries face. They stem from scarcity. What scarcity? Limited amount of land, limited amount of capital, limited amount of labor which we have. So that is the intro part of economics as to why anyone should study economics. Now coming to the definitions part. So let us look at the definitions. Okay, we will come to this later. We are still here only. Okay, if I have to open the textbook, let me just show where we are so that you know. Choice of scarcity done. These are the definitions, like how to define economics. We are here. Okay. So now that we understand scarcity and choice, what is economics exactly? How to define that? Okay, let's look at some of the definitions and then discuss them. So we want clear, everyday definitions that capture this idea of economics with choices and limited resources. Okay, so we need not have to go through these definitions. These definitions are not important except for a couple of them. I'll come back to that, especially Adam Smith's. Okay, that's very important. Economic studies how societies manage scarce resources to produce, distribute, and consume goods and services. We have already seen this definition. That means what? In simple terms, economics is about allocation of limited means. That's what they are trying to say. Whether it's a farmer deciding how to allocate his water and seeds, a tech company deciding what products to develop, or the government deciding its budget priorities. These are all managing scarce resources. Okay. The same, um, in fact, okay, what example can I give? Okay, for example, think of this. Your family's budget constraint. Okay, there is some budget constraint. Your parents have decided to allocate rupees 10,000 for groceries. Now, how to divide it amongst vegetables, rice, lentils, maybe meat if you're a meat eater? So that's an economic problem. The things they choose to buy reflect how they value each item given that constraint. Like, do we have to buy more vegetables, or do we have to buy more rice, more lentils, milk, etc., etc., etc.? So based on their preferences, they will budget it accordingly. Okay. So other definition of economics is by Lionel Robbins, as mentioned here in the textbook. The science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means. Again, most of the definitions are revolving around this. That is scarcity, there is unlimited wants, scarce resources, etc. Okay. In other words, he's saying, Lionel Robbins, economics looks at what people ultimately want, their end goals, and how they use these scarce resources to achieve them. We know what is that we want to achieve. We know what is that we have. How do we use what we have to achieve what we want? So that is what economics is for Lionel Robbins. Okay. So then there is one more definition by Karl Menger, one of the Austrians. He said that basic unit of analysis is man and his choices. That is what economics is according to him. Okay. So in fact, according to Austrian school of economics, each person values goods differently. Yesterday we looked into this. We talked about the Bisleri bottle example based on their personal preferences. So economics is not just about counting how many cars a country can make, but also about understanding why individuals might choose to buy or not buy those cars. So that is very important. So we also have this wealth definition of economics. In fact, Adam Smith is known as the father of modern economics. So he defines science of economics as science of wealth with an objective to increase wealth and richness of a country. He's talking about the country as such. In fact, I would suggest you to read the book itself, that is Wealth of Nations. That will give you a better understanding of what he is saying. So that's called the wealth definition of economics. The objectives of economics is to increase the wealth of a country. Again, this is diametrically opposite to what we have been talking about, that is the individual choices. So this is slightly outdated if you look only at this particular definition, but when you read the book, you will get you'll get the context as to why he is saying whatever he is saying. Okay. So now, why did we go through these definitions, or why do we have to go through these definitions? Because through these definitions we'll try to understand, or we rather understood how deep the subject is, or how wide the subject is rather. So that is why we have to go through all these definitions. As I said, most of these definitions are based on scarcity. So that is the thing. So you can think of 100 other definitions of economics as well. So what we have is just 4 definitions. So okay, they have mentioned few more definitions. So we can go on and on. This is, as I said, slightly outdated. So if you look at the modern definitions of economics, you will find many more. So do we have to study all that? Of course not. Even from the exam point of view, I don't think that would be so relevant either. Okay. So now let's move on to the next topic, which is the nature of economics. Okay, just give me a second so that I can drink water. I hope we are back. Yeah. Let's get back to this. Where were we? Yeah, the nature of economics, right? Fine. So when we say the nature of economics, what we mean is that uh, what economics is like a discipline and how it connects to other fields. So that is why, that is what we are referring to when we are saying the nature of economics. So now, first, we have these things: economics as a science, economics as an art, positive, normative economics. This is what we'll be looking at. Now, they say economics is a social science. That means what? It studies people and societies, not natural phenomena like chemistry or physics. That is different. So that would be pure science. Whereas here we are referring to social sciences, where we are looking at people, societies. Okay. It deals with human behavior. Unlike a what is that physics lab, where you can repeat experiments under control conditions. No, if I do one experiment using some items in a physics lab or even a chemistry lab, I can repeat the same thing again and again and expect more or less the same result. Whereas in case of economics, we can't often run controlled trials. Why? Because no people will react the same manner. No two individuals will react in the same manner. No two countries will react in the same manner. No two organization will react in the same manner. So that's why economics relies on data from real world, logical reasoning, and even sometimes assumptions like other things being equal, we will do this, because there are many assumptions in economics. Otherwise, if we don't assume, then there is no way we can come up with something sensible. Okay, because economics, it's a social science because it overlaps with politics, sociology, psychology. For example, let's say if the government announces a new tax tomorrow, and what does the economics tell us about that? It tells us that it will affect the market. Okay, but understanding why people might protest that the tax involves social and psychological factors. Once again, let me state this. If the government announces a new tax, economics will tell us what? It will affect the market. But understanding why people might protest that particular tax will involve social and psychological factors, and that is what economics tells us. Another aspect of this is that economics is divided into two main branches. So that is what we'll be looking at. That is microeconomics and macroeconomics. So now, what is micro and what is macro? Microeconomics, in fact, looks at the behavior of individual units like consumer, worker, firms, markets. How do households decide what brand of curry powder to buy? How does a local business decide how many workers to hire? How is particular organization procuring the raw materials? These are all micro questions. Even something like let's say local vegetable market prices in Kolkata is nothing but microeconomics. Now the other economics or the other division is the macroeconomics, which looks at the country as a whole. It focuses on the big picture. Outcomes like inflation, total GDP, unemployment rates, economic growth, all these things are part of the macroeconomic factors. Both branches are important, of course. Often students find the macro more abstract because in macro we are looking at the big picture, right? So, and in micro is more relatable because we are looking at individuals. We are looking at one particular organization as to why that person is doing or that organization is doing so. Whereas if millions of households each choose to save more and spend less, then the total demand of something can fall and cause a macro slowdown. Okay, so you can think of this as micro choices aggregate into macro outcomes. So if you like macro, you will obviously like if you like micro, you will obviously like macro also. Imagine 100 different households doing something, buying a particular brand of tea. They change from one to another. Suddenly the demand for that product rises, and the demand for the other product which they have decided not to buy falls. Then it will affect the supply, etc., price, so many things. So that means the individual choices of 100 households has resulted in something macro. That is the macro outcome. So that's why we say Micro choices aggregate into macro outcomes. And when it comes to economics, we can't say it is only qualitative or quantitative. It is both. It is both quantitative as well as qualitative. We of course use statistics, we use graphs, equations to model behavior, but we must remember that it is not just these things which we use. Of course, numbers represent real lives and values, but in fact, the Austrian economics, they caution us not to rely solely on this aggregated data without thinking about the individuals. You should always remember that only individuals act. That means when we look at data like GDP, etc., we must remember they come from millions of individual actions. There is no such thing as someone increasing the GDP automatically. No. When you do something, when I do something, when people around us do something, and when the whole nation does something, then the GDP will get affected. Okay. For example, the GDP of India might be growing at 7%, but that GDP growth is an aggregate figure, no? Right? It doesn't tell you whether that growth is going to everyone or just big companies. Is it only those big companies which are growing, or all of us, are we growing equally? Of course not. It will definitely mask this inequality. That's why many people don't go by this GDP at all, because it kind of masks or it kind of hides all the unwanted stuff which we are not, or rather all the unpleasant stuff. So therefore, we should not ignore that too. And economics is also dynamic. It studies changes over time. It's not static. It's not like accounts wherein we have already formulated the rules and the rules are same forever since the time Luca Pacioli formalized double interest system. No, it's not like that. Prices are rising. There is inflation. Economists will ask why and what next. What do we do? We often talk about business cycles like expansions, recessions in macro. Okay, but those things happen because of some micro actions, no? So that's why we should understand both the macro aspect as well as the micro aspect. So otherwise, there is no point in studying economics at all. Okay. So in fact, a good economist knows the difference between the both micro and macro, and they will also study both micro and macro. You can't say I will only study macro. Of course, your expertise might be in one of the two, but you can't completely ignore the other because one follows the other. Okay. And in summary, what we can understand here is economics as a nature, or since we are looking at the nature of economics, is social. It's about choices, trade-offs. It is split between micro and macro. It uses different models and data. It could be choices, trade-offs, and what else? What else? Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, and it connects, of course, to many aspects of life. Of course, it's not exact science. We can't say it is like physics or chemistry, but it's a structured way of thinking about, you can say, incentives, costs, and benefits. Okay, so that's about the economics as a science or art. Okay, so let's move to the positive normative economics part. Again, this is regarding whether economics should be static or should it suggest, should it make value judgments or not. Economics involves both facts and opinions, and it's important for us to distinguish them. This is where this positive and normative economics come in. So let us try to understand what is what. Let's start with positive economics. Now, positive economics deals with what is, like objective facts, the cause-effect relationship that can be tested. It's the science of what is, in fact. For example, if I say increasing the price of petrol will likely reduce the consumption, that's a positive economic statement. It's describing a likely outcome. No, what am I saying? Increasing the price of petrol will likely reduce its consumption. I'm saying if you increase the price of petrol, the consumption will come down. And it's not as if whatever I have said is final. Okay, I'm only trying to describe a likely outcome. And anyone could check data. Maybe you can check the past data. Whenever the government has increased the price of petrol, has the consumption come down? Okay. So, in fact, as someone said, positive economic focuses on the descriptions and the explanations of economic phenomena as to why something happened. It uses data. It avoids words like you should do this, you ought to do this. Okay. So how, I will end this with one example. India's inflation rate was 6.5% last year. Now what is this, positive or normative? This is a positive statement. Meaning, when I say positive, it's not that it's good. What we are trying to say is, here we are talking about facts. We are not making any value judgments. We are saying this was the case. That's it. Now coming to the normative part of economics, here we are making value judgments. We are giving opinions. We are recommending. It's a science of what ought to be, what should be. Okay. In fact, that's what the famous economist J.N. Keynes said. Normative statements express beliefs or ideals about fairness or goals, like what you should do, what is fair, what is that we should believe, what is the ideal situation here. It uses should, the word should, and depends on values, whether you believe in education is a fundamental right or not. No amount of, but the problem here with normative is that no amount of data can prove that statement true or false. It's because it's all about value judgment. For example, think of it this way. If someone tells you that unemployment is 7%, okay, that's a positive. I mean, that's a statement. But if someone says unemployment should have been lower, now that's a normative statement, because someone is saying, okay, it should have been lower. So they are making one statement. Now, how do we prove that it should have been lower? Of course, it is ideal for everyone if it is lower. In this given example, it is ideal. But in certain cases, we can't prove such statements at all. Okay. So again, you can study hundreds of economists over time who have said that no, economics should only be positive, and some have said no, economics should be normative, because without being normative, what's the point? The others are saying no, we will tell why something is happening. We will tell what is happening. Let others, maybe the politician, the administrator, let them take the decision. So we do not know. It's, of course, as always, it lies somewhere between the two extremes. So that's why we have to look at both the positive aspect as well as the normative aspect of economics. So we can't always say it should be this way or that way always. So that is the thing. Anyway, so let us move to the scope of economics. So we have already seen micro, macro, no? Okay. So then what else? International economics. So this is nothing but the, think of it as the trade and finance between countries. Like India's trade policies, what are the exchange rates, the balance of payments, all those things come under the international economics. It answers questions like what goods should India import? In fact, that itself is misleading, because India as a country doesn't import anything. You as an individual will import. I as an individual will import something. Like us, there are so many individuals who will import so many things. Then only we say, okay, India has imported so much of, let's say, wheat, for instance. Now, how does the fall of rupee affect our economy? So this comes under international economics. Then we have developmental economics. What is this? I'm not going in the same order, of course. Since we are in India, this is very relevant for us. It studies how countries become richer and improve the living standards. It looks at poverty, it looks at income inequality, education, health, and various other policies which help us promote growth and reduce poverty. So that is the developmental economics. Then we have environmental economics, which in fact I would say is more important, because it looks at how economy interacts with environment. For example, issues like pollution, climate change, resource depletion are considered. This is, I would say, the most relevant economics right now. Look at the situation in Delhi. Look at the situation in Mumbai. I don't know how people are even living there. Okay, now I'm making a normative statement, how people are living there. Okay, I'm not saying just look at the AQI in Delhi. AQI in Delhi is so much. AQI in, Mumbai is so much. I'm also asking this rhetorical question. How are they even living in such places? Okay, so that would be environmental economics. Then we have behavioral economics. It's kind of a new field wherein we combine both psychology and economics as to how someone behaves, or rather why someone behaves. Sometimes people behave irrationally from our point of view. But from their point of view, of course, they are rational. Okay, so you might wonder, why do people even buy lottery tickets? Because look at the odds. You have 1 in a lakh or 10 lakh chance of getting the draw, but yet people buy. There are so many people who buy lottery tickets every day. So that's why many states have in fact banned. For example, the state where I come from, Karnataka, it has banned lottery ticket long ago because they realized, okay, people are getting addicted to lottery tickets. So they banned it. Okay, this comes under which part of economics? Behavioral economics. Then we have public economics or public finance. So how do governments raise revenue and how does the government spend it? It covers taxation, subsidies, government budgets, welfare state, debates about GST, even income tax, etc., etc., etc. So these are the different, and even we have urban and rural economics, like that is based on the geography. So in general, so these are the different areas, or rather the scope of economics. This is what we'll be looking at in economics. So these are the areas which we will be looking at in economics. Okay, so that is what it says. Then we'll move to the next topic, which is the working of economic systems. So now, what are these economic systems? We have had economic systems since a long time. Let us see what it is. So it's about the different ways society organize production and distribution. Think of an economic system as a system of production, resource allocation, and distribution of goods and services within an economy. Okay, it essentially tells us how a country answers the basic questions: what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, and sometimes when to produce also. Okay. Every economy, whether it is a single village or a company or a nation, must solve all these questions because of scarcity. Okay. So now let us look at the different types of economy which we have. We have all these things here. I'm just looking at each of those quickly. Market economy, which is nothing but capitalism. Here, what do? We have private individuals. These private individuals are the real players in a market economy driven by the market. They will have their own resources. Supply and demand in markets are determined through prices, and in fact the market, that is demand and supply forces, will determine what and how much gets produced, because no one is deciding for me. I am a producer. I know how much to produce. If let's assume for a second that I am a bag manufacturer, I know how many bags to manufacture. I know what is the demand for this particular type of bag, and I will determine how much to produce. No one will tell me how much to produce. Okay, and I will also decide whom to sell it to. You can't tell me sell only to the people of Tamil Nadu, sell only to the people of Kerala or Maharashtra. No, I will sell to people whomever I like to, because I am the owner of this organization. I will decide. So this is largely the market economy. Today, in fact, India is largely a market economy. So there are, of course, some unwanted government interventions here and there, but still, we can't say we are 100% market economy, because government controls so many things through all its bad policies. Okay, but yet we have kind of market economy. Then we have this socialistic economy, that is planned economy. This is where we suffered a lot in India. Initially, first 30-40 years, we adopted this socialism and lost out to many countries, including China. Here, what happens in case of socialism or planned economy? The government will decide, the state will decide how much to produce, what to produce, and for whom to produce. In fact, Germany was one such country. Even Russia, the erstwhile USSR, was one such country. So even we were that country. Remember the 5-year plans, license Raj, etc. So there was a central planning authority. They would sit and plan in Delhi. They would create that plan, like we will produce so many millions of steel. We will produce so many tons of rice, wheat, etc. So this failed, and thankfully we are out of it. Then we have the mixed economy, wherein there is this common practice where we blend market economy as well as planned economy or the socialist economy. We say India's economy is mixed, but as I said earlier, India's economy is largely private, or rather capitalistic, but still the government intervenes in terms of policies, so which kind of makes it mixed economy in a very bad way. Okay, so the government regulates certain things in India: healthcare, banking, roads, etc., etc. So therefore, in such circumstances, we can't say we are fully capitalistic in nature. Okay, so we have that as well as mixed economy depending on certain policies. Okay, so that is the thing. Of course, there are a few features here. I don't want to get into each of those. I've already mentioned what is what so earlier, so I don't want to get into that again. You just go through that, you will get an idea as to what is that. So this is where we stop here. So as I said, uh, I am looking at it mostly from the point of view of examples, mostly as a subject which is required by all of us, not just for the sake of CSEET. Of course, here too we require this because we want to pass this CSEET. But at the same time, think of this as a subject which you will be using throughout your life. That way, it is far more interesting. So of course we will be sharing notes because the way the material has been designed, it's too dry, so I don't want this to be the only thing which you will be reading. Of course you can read this, you have to at least once or twice, then you can check our notes. For that notes, again let me remind you, you have to join the WhatsApp group. We have this WhatsApp channel, so join that. We will be sharing. Of course I haven't shared anything yet, I will be very soon. So that's the thing. If at all you have any doubts, please do ask. You can stop me at any point of time, or even otherwise, once if you are watching the recorded session of this, you can always drop your comments below. I will try to answer that. So we have looked at all these things up to the demand and supply stage. So tomorrow we will be continuing from there. So we have already seen what is what. We have discussed at length yesterday as to which type of economy, or what is the benefit of Austrian system of economics, or rather the background of Austrian school of economics and all that. So if you have understood that, then you will easily understand what is the merit of each of this system and what are the demerits, etc., etc. So you don't have to by heart every definition here. That would be too much to expect. So what I would want you to do is read this material and try to understand, because I don't expect you to understand everything in one go. It's too bland as a text. So but read it so that you will be familiar with the words. That is very important. Okay, so then once we share our notes, then it will be much easier for you to understand what exactly we are trying to convey. Okay, so tomorrow what we'll do is we'll start with theory of demand and supply, one of the most important theories or concepts in economics. Thank you. If you have anything to ask, please do ask. The comment section is there. I'll be looking at that. See you